Discussing world-changing ideas through real conversations, exploring the potential of technology to solve the most critical challenges facing business, people, and the planet. Coming up.
Do we need to delegate artificial intelligence to take decisions about who to fire, who to hire, who should be promoted, who should be my ally maybe in a synergy in my own company? If a leader believes that that decision is not pertinent to him or to her, but is pertinent to artificial intelligence, frankly, the person should stand up and leave the chance to somebody else. Leadership is about responsibility and accountability. It's not about power and money.
This is the Real Conversations podcast by Nokia. Here is Michael Hainsworth.
There is little doubt that artificial intelligence will change the way we work. Paolo Gallo is the author of the 7 Games of Leadership, Navigating the Inner Journey of Leaders. And he emphasizes the increasing importance of human qualities in succeeding in this world, arguing that empathy, collaboration, and caring are what make us truly human and can't be replicated by AI. So how does he describe how AI is changing the world of work in which we live today and will live in the world of tomorrow?
Massively, in one word. But if I had to expand in a few seconds, I would say that the qualities that make us human are going to be more relevant going forward. And what I mean by this is empathy, collaboration, understanding, caring, and the capacity to engage with people in a meaningful way. This is something that I believe is going to be more and more relevant going forward.
This sort of speaks to the idea that artificial intelligence is going to take things away from us or take them off our plate as workers, but at the same time, there will always be something that an artificial intelligence machine learning algorithm cannot do, and it is be empathetic, be collaborative, and care.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll give you maybe one story, which is a couple of decades ago. An anthropologist called Margaret Wald has been asked the question, when does civilization start? And people say, okay, when maybe, they invented trade or currency, or people start to exchange goods and services. And she said, about 50,000 years ago, they found out skeletons where we found trace of bones being cured. And so up to a certain moment in civilization, when somebody got injured, he or she was left alone dying. And there's a moment in civilization where we started to care. We started to take care of the people that were injured. This is a moment when civilization starts. Civilization starts when we start to care. And equally, you can say the civilization stopped to be there when we start to care. So care is not just a condescending approach to humankind. It's really understanding all the people's viewpoint and understanding that perhaps all the people that think differently from us deserve to be listened. Without that capacity, nothing will be solved. And I think we have seen ample example of the terrible consequences when we don't listen to people that don't think the way we do.
I find it tremendously ironic that as we talk about the next major leap in technology and the next major leap in the evolution of the workplace, that it's not about technical transformation as much as it is about the transformation of ourselves, because empathy, collaboration, and caring are not things we're taught in business school to focus on. It's about being competitive. It's about getting the edge over someone else in the workplace. And for generations, we have been taught to always look out for number one.
Michael, if I could, I would give you a standing ovation, because that's exactly what I would say and what I did write in my own book, and give you maybe a 30-second stories and an emphasis on the word transformation you just used. I remember perfectly well my first day at work. There was February 1st, 1989, at Citigroup, okay? I was 23 years old. I was in New York and just graduated from Bocconi, and I felt, to be the king of the world. And somebody entered, and it was a bunch of people called executive trainees, recruited from all over the globe. We were about 120 of us at that time, and I remember I was the only one from Italy. And our starting salary, still remember, was $24,000, which was not a lot of money even then, okay? And the guy said, the person that I met first, he said, okay, guys, think about your salary. And we all thought about 24,000 because we all started with the same salary. Multiply by 4. And if this is not your salary, within 2 years, you're just a loser. And so for the very first second, the idea was equated that success equal to make money, okay? And I was 23 years old. And so I got an injections of competition first day of school, okay, if you want. Now, fast forward, 35 years later, I'm now a 60 years old guy. And I really believe that input was completely wrong. I'm not saying that money are not important, but I think that we need to actually understand that competition and elbowing others is actually the recipe for disaster, stress, burnout, and fundamentally for society, they don't work. So what we need to do, and you use exactly the word I use many times in my book, is to understand the difference between change and transformation. Change is something that occurs outside you, okay? And change management is not easy. For example, when you change house, you change job, you change country, you need to go through a process of adaptation. Transformation, you need to change. And in order to understand the complexity of what's happening around you, the first thing that you need to transform is yourself. So the book that I wrote, The 7 Games of Leadership, is focused on understanding the different phases of a transformation that we have to go through in order to develop yourself as an individual. And only and exclusively if you do this, you're a credible leader. If not, you're just a person in power.
So when leaders are navigating this transforming world and they themselves are dealing with change and they have to transform themselves, how do you develop yourself as an individual? How do you go through those personal growth phases to step away from that previous generation attitude of competition and pivot towards collaboration?
There is a phase, I call them games because there are some rules that kind of govern every single step in your journey. It's called the crisis game. And the crisis game occurs to everybody. I jokingly say, listen, the crisis like Easter, you don't know the exact date, but it's coming, okay? And what I mean by this is sometimes around the early to mid-40s, you scratch your head, you already played half of your professional life in a certain modality with competition, great determination, hard work, and you still have probably 20, if not more, years in front of you. And you go through a crisis, and crisis is a Greek word that implies the necessity of a decision. How you deal with this crisis, to me, define the difference between navigating or just floating, or thriving and continue growing as an individual. And to me, the element that allows you to grow as an individual is understanding that a crisis is a wonderful moment of reinvention, and the losses that you have incurred in your life. And when I say losses, I mean not financial losses, but maybe difficult moment, are an integral part of you growing as an individual, not something that you have to avoid, deny, or maybe just go back to regression by pretending to be a 30 years old person when you may be 50. So I think I had the good fortune to work with hundreds of leaders, and the one that I really believe they are true leaders are the ones that have mastered this capacity to manage the crisis in a meaningful way.
Well, then, in the age of artificial intelligence, what are the responsibilities of leaders for the future?
I think the responsibility of leaders is to understand that they have a responsibility. What I mean by this is, there is a lot of debate about delegating of tasks, or many things will be done by artificial intelligence. That's fair enough, okay? And maybe there are certain tasks that is absolutely fine to delegate machines to do it. But the ethical dimension of decision making has to remain with the leader, has to remain squarely within the mind and the DNA of a leader, of a leadership team in organizations. And so to me, understand that leadership is equal responsibility, is not equal power or compensation, is actually not so obvious in the mind of many leaders that I met in my life. In fact, actually, I don't consider these people as leaders. I just consider people that end up to be in a power position, but they're not leaders at all.
You've told me that when it comes to being a leader of the future, you have to be optimistic, but we need to define the term optimism differently from what we might normally assume it means.
The overall idea in the conventional truth is optimism is things will go the way you hope, And, even in my own country, Italy, during COVID, everybody said, andrà tutto bene, everything will be fine. Oh, that would be wonderful to think that that would be the outcome, but regrettably, we learned that this is not the case. So optimism is not things will go the way you hope they will go. The optimism of a leader is to say, we will find a meaningful solution, whatever happens to the organization. And a meaningful solution is not necessarily what you thought of at the beginning, but it's something that you built along the way with the people that you collaborate with. So optimism is not like tutto andrà bene, anything will be great, but to say we will find a solution together if we have the decency, the integrity, and the time and the depth to discuss it and to work together for building and shaping something different that right now perhaps we don't even imagine.
This brings us back to something we had talked about a little bit earlier. You say that finding meaningful solutions requires collaboration. That, again, is something that we were not necessarily taught when one became a leader. This attitude of a top-down approach to decision-making within an organization and as a way of directing individuals is something that you're saying that we need to sort of set aside and recognize that collaboration is the key, not a dictatorial response from above.
Absolutely, Michael, and I appreciate your question because in my book I try to explain in two different ways. And the first one is to say, if you look at the way we're developed, we when we're born, we are in a dependency mode. We depend from our parents to take care of us. Then sometimes as a teenager or later, you start to think that you can be totally independent. Of course, we know that this is not the case when you are 15 or 18. And I'm going to say this because my daughter, she's 18, so that's exactly the moment that we're living right now. It's a beautiful moment. But eventually, you end up to be independent financially or logistically, etc. And you think, yeah, I'm an adult. I'm now independent, okay? But then the real maturity of a leader occurs when you understand that while you're not dependent anymore, you need to become interdependent. Interdependent means you need to collaborate with different individuals, so different parts of the organization in order to succeed in your role. The other dimension is understanding that in the past, most of the problems that we've been asked to collaborate and to solve were very, let's say, complicated problem. And a complicated problem requires technical expertise. So if tomorrow, for example, my TV is broken, I need to get somebody that knows how to fix it. It's a complicated problem to me because I have no idea how to fix it. And I need an expert that is very good in fixing TVs to solve it. Point is, if you think about COVID, artificial intelligence, the jobs, the war in Palestine, in Ukraine, climate change, all these problems are not just complicated, they're complex. And complex implies there are different elements in the part, all of them with a part of the solution, and the solution occurs exclusively if you collaborate with people around the table. Collaborate doesn't mean that you love each of the person around the table, but means that you have the necessity to sit down and listen in order to find a compromise that is meaningful for everybody involved. If you don't listen anybody's part and you think that you own the truth and everybody else doesn't, by definition, you're not a leader. You're not a leader. In my view, you're just something different that doesn't work.
But there is a perception that adoption of artificial intelligence in the workplace means that AI is going to make the decisions for us, and that collaboration isn't relevant because we've got this machine that's spitting out the answers for us. We just need to follow the machine.
If a leader abdicates decision-making, then in my view, should not be considered a leader. He should be removed immediately. Or you can say, listen, there are some decisions that is absolutely fine to me for artificial intelligence to decide, but there are some that I want to retain. And maybe let me give you a very stupid example. When I drive, I put YouTube, and YouTube knows the songs that I love. And next things I know, I listen to Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, and YouTube, and Pink Floyd, because the system will learn that that's the music that I listen. And that's fine to me to delegate YouTube to choose my songs. But do we need to delegate, artificial intelligence to take decision about who to fire, who to hire, who should be promoted, who should be my ally maybe in a synergy in my own company? if a leader believes that that decision is not pertinent to him or to her, but is pertinent to artificial intelligence, frankly, the person should stand up and leave the chance to somebody else. Leadership is about responsibility and accountability. It's not about power and money. And in my book, I try to explain the difference between visibility and credibility. And these are two different things. And so credibility to me is mostly related to ethical behaviors that start from decision-making.
Accountability and responsibility. What about ethics? What role does that play in being a leader in a world where artificial intelligence is going to try to take more of my day-to-day life off my plate so that I can focus on other things?
But in a way, I may be naive, but I like to think that if artificial intelligence is removing, let's go into this way, the operational dimension of my role, and I can focus on something that is more strategic and foresight and human, I welcome artificial intelligence. So in a way, I don't need to waste time in doing stuff that is repetitive and laborious and maybe tedious. And by the way, I have an atrocious attention to detail, so it's probably very welcome dimension that allows you to think a little bit more about all the stuff that are more relevant.
After this podcast, learn more about this and other insightful topics by going to nokia.com/thought-leadership. There you'll find additional information linked to today's podcast. So as we've talked about the evolution of leadership in an artificial intelligence world to be more focused on empathy, collaboration, caring, the accountability, responsibility, and the ethics associated with it, what about the flip side? What about the employee side? What about those underneath the leadership pyramid? What role is there for loosening control over those employees, giving them the ability to take greater responsibility for the evolution of the workplace? Every time we talk about taking a responsibility off the plate of a leader, there are those who might push back, saying, "Well, then I'm no longer in charge if I'm focusing on these other aspects, if I'm loosening that control, if I'm giving the employees the agency to make decisions for themselves, what's my role in all of this?" Again,
another fair and meaningful question, Michael, and I appreciate this. And perhaps I can dust off my former role as being HR director for maybe too long, for 17 years. And I met, thousands of people from completely different sectors and nationalities and political or sexual preferences. So I had a large variety of conversations over the years, no? And I really believe that we are also accountable for our own professional growth, okay? Of course, the manager, the organization provide hopefully the investment, that safe space, or the psychological safe space to do it. But the responsibility to grow professionally is mainly related to the behavior and the mindset of the individual. And in my book, I try to provide, I wouldn't say a magic formula because there's nothing magic, but a bit of common sense to help people to navigate in that specific dimension. And I keep on asking people, say, how do you increase your professional value? And people start to think about my own salary. So, okay, I'm making 100,000, I want to make 150, how do I make an extra 50K? Which is, if the question is, do you want to earn more money? The answer is yes, but this actually is the wrong question. The right question should be, how to increase my value? How to increase the value that I provide to the community that I serve, to my colleagues, to my clients, and how to continue to be relevant regardless of what's happening in technology, artificial intelligence. And personally, and believe me, this is not something I figured out yesterday, but it's something that I've been thinking and watching and studying and debating for now 3 decades. I think there are 3 elements that each of us should focus clearly in order to continue to be relevant in the job market. The first one, what I call knowledge capital, is the knowledge that you have as an individual, but knowledge is to be translated in something concrete. And I jokingly say, listen, if I were to say to you guys that I know by heart every recipe of the Italian cuisine, you would be impressed. But if I were to say I had never cooked anything, you would be less impressed. What I mean by this is whatever knowledge you bring, you have to prove that it has provided some value to the people that are eating, not just a theoretical knowledge. The second one, I call it a relationship capital, which is fundamentally the number of people that knows you and number of people that trust you. knows you is adheres to me. I make the difference between visibility and credibility. It's not a number of people following you on LinkedIn. It's more about a number of people that they know you are a trustworthy individual and they call you back if you call them, or vice versa. So how many people do you have that fully trust you, and how many people do you have that you fully trust? This is a huge, let's say, capital that you have. Now, if you put the two together and you sum it, you have to multiply by your reputational capital. And reputation, as I said earlier, is what people said about you when you're not there. And the reason why I'm in this formula that I share in my book, I multiply, because if your reputation is zero, it doesn't matter how many people do you know and how much do you know, because the reputation is zero. So protecting your reputation, to me, is absolutely essential. And don't forget that what is legal is not necessarily, let's say, acceptable. So don't confuse reputation with legality, because reputation is something more profound related to human qualities.
So then when it comes to the skill sets that are required for an employee to remain relevant in an AI-assisted workplace, is it just a matter of well, sorry, you got to go back to school, you got to get yourself another degree?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think I'm trying to help people maybe just by having us. I know it's a bit simplistic, but I think it's helpful. Whatever decision you take, try to understand who are the people or the organization that would be impacted by that decision, okay? And then reach out to them to find a meaningful solution for everybody involved. And let me give you a practical example. I've been head of human resources for many years, and once per year I needed to go to the board to make a proposal for the salary increases, okay? Well, I need to do the board, everybody in the board. I need to talk to the unions. I need to talk to the chief financial officer. I need to talk to the leadership team. I need to talk to the president. I need to have a salary service. I need to talk to my competitors. And I need to understand why people accept or decline job offers. So what I'm trying to say here is there is a moment where being a technical expert is no longer sufficient. You really have to understand, if I were to take the decision, who would be impacted? And then immediately reach out to them, because there are studies that demonstrate that when people are involved in the decision is digested, is implemented. If people are just impose the decision doesn't stick, it doesn't work. So to me, a positive mindset is to say, it doesn't matter the sector, the level of seniority that you have, try to think how whatever you do has an impact on others. Reach out to them, invest quality time to collaborate with them, develop trust. And this investment that initially can be considered as a waste of time, in reality is a beautiful investment that will pay off going forward.
It sounds like you need to have a mindset of intellectual curiosity to succeed and survive in evolving workplace environments as AI changes everything.
I mean, this is something that I keep on also we discuss with my daughter, and I also say that, which is for many years I interviewed more than 8,000 people in my life, given my role. And for many years, I always ask, what is the most important thing that you learned in the last 12 months? And to me, that question, the answer from that question gave me a sense that the person was intellectually curious or not. Or maybe somebody say, I've learned that, there is a better parking lot on the right side of the building. That to me was not a great answer, no? But if somebody say, listen, I'm learning that, I've studied economics and behavioral economics, a new discipline, and I found it fascinating, and that's what I'm trying to understand. That I develop a new marketing strategy based on the books that I read from Daniel Kahneman or whatever. That implies that the person is a mindset of intellectual curiosity that will continue regardless of the role. So it's not the accumulation of diplomas. It's about a mindset of humbleness. And perhaps, as my father used to say, Paolo, if you feel like an idiot, you're probably learning. And so I'm asking people, try to feel like an idiot at least twice a week. I don't say respectfully. And idiot, of course, is not meant as an insult, but like the awareness that you've not yet fully grasped a given subject, that gives you the curiosity to go deeper on that subject. And so if you have that mindset, I think you will be probably fine if you have the optimism that we discussed before to progress.
We've discussed repeatedly over the course of our time together the word collaboration. and how that needs to be an evolution in our own minds as either employees or as leaders. But also, what about collaboration across industries? Do we need to rewrite our programming on how we collaborate with those who for generations we've considered to be competitors and those that we're trying to overcome as opposed to work with?
No, here I can give you maybe an example from sports and one from business. You remember when Federer and Nadal played the last game together? They hold hands and they started to cry. And I think it was a beautiful, beautiful scene because both of them said, you know what, actually, I would have not become the player that I became without Roger or without Rafael. And this is, to me, is a beautiful example that collaboration can be actually done through competition if competition is done in a fair, transparent, and meaningful way. So I'm not saying that competition is wrong by any means, but I'm saying that it can be shaped in a way that improves both parties if collaboration is honest and intellectually meaningful. Okay, so this is the first element. The second one, and I want to provide an example. Some time ago, I facilitated a meeting with about 50 people in the room. 3 of them were Minister of Finance, 3 of them were Minister of Education, 3 or 4 Minister of Health, a couple of deans from university, few CEOs, head of unions, students, unemployed people. So there was a large variety of people in the room. And the question is, what does it mean when life expectancies go from 70 to 90? Okay? And all of a sudden, remember, Minister of Finance said, shit, I don't have money to pay pensions. And the dean of university said, I cannot expect, to give a degree to kids age 23. They will die at 90, and they have maybe 70 years in which they don't study. What can you do to constantly, help them to keep on growing long after they left university? And the Minister of Health said, Jesus, I spend 95% of my budget in people that are 60 years old and above. And if now the average age is going to be 90, I have absolutely no money left to pay for the people that are below 50, so let alone young people. So this to me was a beautiful example that how something has a systemic, consequence on every single element. And all these people needed to, sit down and collaborate to say, how can we find a solution that allows us to train people, recruit people, to retain people, to curate people, and to make sure that even the elderly, we care about them and we don't just forget them somewhere and we let them die. And that to me was a very watershed moment where everybody understood all the people's viewpoint and they started to collaborate. And so collaboration, again, is not just a cute verb that you put on job description. It's something that is an essential element of leadership and behavior of any person working in any complex organization.
So to bring this conversation full circle, are you pessimistic or are you optimistic that AI and humanity can work together?
I'm a concerned optimist. A concern because it's fair to say that legislation usually comes 5 or 10 years after something is implemented. And therefore, my concern is related to the speed of our society to shape and to frame meaningful policies that regulate something that right now is still in the far west. But I believe that I remain optimistic because, you need to keep faith in humankind.
Building a future that's productive, sustainable, and inclusive in a world that acts together. Discover how by visiting nokia.com/thought-leadership.